I was folding laundry when the invitation arrived, slipped quietly under my apartment door like it didn't already carry the weight to knock the air out of my lungs. Cream, colored envelope, thick paper, gold lettering. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Daniel Harper. The man who had disappeared the moment I told him I was pregnant. For a full minute, I just stared at the envelope, my fingers frozen around a tiny sock that belonged to my daughter, Emma. She was sitting on the floor nearby, lining up her stuffed animals by height, completely unaware that my past had just walked back into my present without asking permission. "Mama," she said cheerfully, "the bear has to stand next to the giraffe. He's brave." I smiled automatically. "He is." My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I opened the envelope. "You are cordially invited to the annual North Star Leadership Summit." Daniel's name was printed at the bottom in bold. Keynote speaker. I skimmed the rest of the page, my hands shaking. High-profile donors, media coverage, live broadcast, an awards ceremony to honor Daniel Harper's contributions to corporate ethics and leadership. I laughed once, quietly, bitterly. Ethics, leadership. The man who had blocked my number, moved cities, and pretended I didn't exist when I needed him most, was about to be celebrated on stage for his integrity. Emma tugged my sleeve. "Mama, why are you sad?" I knelt down in front of her and brushed her hair back gently. "I'm not sad," I said. "I'm just surprised." That night after Emma was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with the invitation spread out in front of me. I read every word slowly, and then I saw it, panel session, the cost of success. I felt something cold and calm settle over me. Daniel didn't know. He didn't know about Emma, and he certainly didn't know who would be standing on that stage with him. Because beneath the keynote schedule, printed in smaller letters, was another name. Guest speaker, Dr. Eleanor Hayes, my name. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. 3 years earlier, I had been invisible. Pregnant, alone, working 2 jobs while finishing my doctorate because quitting was not an option, and disappearing was not in my nature. Daniel had called it bad timing. He had called it inconvenient. He had called it something he wasn't ready for. Then he had vanished, no calls, no messages, no support, just silence, so I built a life without him. I finished my degree. I took a research position no one thought would matter. I focused on work, on Emma, on survival. What I didn't do was announce myself. Success came quietly, publications, grants, advisory roles, until one day someone noticed. North Star noticed. They wanted my research, my voice, my perspective, and they never once mentioned Daniel Harper. I picked up my phone and made a call. "Yes," I said calmly, "I accept the invitation." The woman on the other end sounded relieved. "We're honored to have you, Dr. Hayes." I smiled. They had no idea. The summit was held in Chicago. A massive venue, glass walls, bright lights, cameras everywhere, the kind of place where people wore confidence like armor and mistakes were buried under applause. I arrived early. Emma was staying with my sister for the weekend. She didn't know where I was going, only that Mama had work. As I walked through security, I caught a glimpse of Daniel across the lobby. He looked exactly the same. Tailored suit, easy smile, surrounded by people hanging on every word. He didn't see me. I wasn't surprised. I had learned long ago that men like him only recognize what reflects them. Backstage, a coordinator handed me a microphone. "You'll go on after the keynote," she said, "just a short segment." I nodded. Short was all I needed. The lights dimmed. The audience applauded as Daniel Harper walked onto the stage. He spoke about responsibility, about choices, about standing by your values when things get difficult. I watched from the side of the stage, my expression calm, my hands steady. He told jokes, the crowd laughed. He spoke about legacy. I smiled. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. Then the host returned to the microphone. "And now," she said, "we're honored to welcome Dr. Eleanor Hayes, whose groundbreaking research has reshaped how we think about leadership and accountability." That was my cue. As I stepped onto the stage, Daniel turned toward me. Our eyes met. The smile slid off his face, slowly. Recognition dawned, confusion, shock, fear. I took my place at the podium. "Good evening," I said evenly. The room was silent. "I want to begin by talking about responsibility," I continued. "Not the kind we discuss in theory, but the kind that shows up in real life when no one is watching." Daniel hadn't moved. His hands were clenched at his sides. "I've spent years studying how leaders define integrity," I said. "And I've learned something important." I paused. "Integrity isn't proven on stage. It's proven in private." A murmur rippled through the audience. I looked directly at Daniel. 3 years ago, I said calmly, I was pregnant, alone, and abandoned by a man who decided responsibility was optional when it became inconvenient. The room went completely still. Daniel's face went white. "That man," I said, my voice steady, "is standing on this stage tonight." Gasps echoed. Cameras zoomed in. Daniel opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "I didn't come here for revenge," I said. "I came here for truth." I reached into my bag and pulled out a photograph. A small girl with dark hair and bright eyes, smiling at the camera. "This," I said, holding it up, "is Emma. She is 3 years old. She is brilliant, kind, and loved." I looked back at Daniel. "She is your daughter." The room erupted. Daniel staggered back as if I had struck him. "And she doesn't need you," I finished quietly. "But the world deserves to know who you really are." Security moved. The host looked panicked. The broadcast cut to silence. I stepped away from the podium, my heart pounding, my hands still steady. Backstage, no one stopped me. No one spoke. I walked out of the venue into the cold Chicago air and breathed deeply. For the first time in 3 years, I felt light. Not because I had exposed him, but because I had finally refused to be invisible. The headlines exploded before I reached the hotel. By the time I closed the door behind me and leaned my back against it, my phone was vibrating nonstop on the bedside table. Calls, messages, notifications stacking on top of each other faster than I could read them. I didn't touch the phone. I went into the bathroom, washed my hands slowly, watched the water run over my fingers until my breathing evened out. My reflection stared back at me from the mirror, calm on the surface, eyes darker than usual. I wasn't shaking. That surprised me. 3 years ago, I would have been shaking, apologizing, explaining, wondering if I'd gone too far. Now, I just felt finished. I walked back into the room and finally picked up the phone. Unknown number. I let it ring, another call, unknown again, then a message from the summit organizers. "We need to talk immediately." I typed one response, "tomorrow." Then I turned the phone face down and sat on the edge of the bed. My thoughts went to Emma. Her laugh, the way she mispronounced certain words, how she pressed her forehead against mine when she was tired. I hadn't done this for myself. I had done it so she would never grow up hearing lies about where she came from. The knock on the door came an hour later. I already knew who it was. I opened the door. Daniel stood there, pale, disheveled, the confidence stripped from him so completely he looked like a stranger. "Eleanor," he said hoarsely, "I didn't invite him in. You shouldn't be here," I said calmly. "You blindsided me." He snapped, anger flashing briefly before collapsing back into panic. "You destroyed everything." I studied him. "No," I replied. "I told the truth. What it destroyed was the image you built on silence." He ran a hand through his hair. "You had no right." "I had every right." I said. "You took away my choice when you disappeared. Tonight I took it back." His eyes flicked past me into the room. "Where is she?" "At home," I said, "with people who show up." He swallowed. "I didn't know." "You chose not to know," I corrected. "That's not fair," he said weakly. "Neither was being pregnant and abandoned." I replied. For a moment, he looked like he might cry. Instead, his voice hardened. "You could have come to me privately." "And what?" I asked. "Given you time to protect yourself." rewrite the story. Silence. I didn't owe you privacy. I continued. You owed me responsibility. A door opened down the hall. Someone glanced over. Daniel lowered his voice. What do you want? I thought about it. I want you to stay away from my daughter, I said. And I want you to stop pretending you're a man you're not. He laughed bitterly. You think anyone will believe you? I held up my phone. I have documentation, I said calmly. Messages you sent before you vanished, medical records, witnesses, and now a live broadcast. His shoulders slumped. You ruined me, he whispered. I tilted my head. No, you did that the day you walked away. I stepped back and closed the door. He didn't knock again. The next morning, the world had decided. Daniel's keynote had been pulled from the summit website. Sponsors issued statements. The company he chaired announced an internal review. His social media accounts went dark. My inbox filled with requests, interviews, comments, clarifications. I declined all of them. The organizers met me in a private conference room that afternoon. We had no idea. One of them said, rubbing his temples. I know, I replied. You put us in an impossible position. Another added. No, I said. I revealed one you were already in. They exchanged glances. What happens now? The first one asked. You decide, I said. Do you want leadership to mean something, or just look like it? They didn't answer. I didn't wait for one. I flew home that evening. Emma ran into my arms the moment I walked through my sister's door. Mama, she squealed. I held her so tightly she laughed. You were gone forever, she said. I know, I replied softly. I'm here now. That night, after she fell asleep, my sister sat beside me on the couch. You just blew up the internet, she said quietly. I know, I replied. Are you okay? I nodded. I am. She studied my face. You don't look relieved. I'm not, I said. I'm resolved. The days that followed were loud. Strangers debated my character. Commentators argued motives. Some called me brave. Others called me vindictive. I didn't read much of it. What mattered came in quieter ways. A letter from a woman who'd left an abusive marriage. An email from a daughter who'd never met her father. A message from a man who said he'd chosen to stay when it got hard because of what he saw. Those I read. Daniel tried again, this time through lawyers. I responded once. All communication goes through my attorney. Do not contact me again. He complied, not because he respected me, because he had no power left. Months passed. The storm moved on as storms always do. My work continued. North Star never invited me back. I didn't miss them. Another organization did, then another. I became careful about where I lent my voice. I spoke about accountability, about truth, about what leadership looked like when no one applauded. I never mentioned Daniel by name again. I didn't need to. Emma turned 4. At her birthday party, surrounded by balloons and laughter, she tugged my sleeve. Mama, she whispered, who's my daddy? I took a breath. You have a daddy who helped make you, I said gently. And you have a mama who stayed. She considered this. Do I need him? She asked. I smiled and brushed frosting from her cheek. No, I said. You never did. She nodded, satisfied, and ran back to her friends. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone and felt the full weight of what I'd done. Not regret. Completion. I had closed a door that should never have been left open. And for the first time since the day Daniel walked away, I slept without the past knocking in my dreams. Life did not slow down after the noise faded. It simply rearranged itself. The first real shift came when my university asked me to take a leave of absence. Not because they disagreed with what I had done, but because they were afraid of attention. Donations. Board members, reputation. They wrapped it in careful language, neutral phrases, institutional concern. I listened quietly. Then I declined the leave. I'm not the problem, I said calmly, and I won't behave like I am. There was a pause on the other end of the call. We'll need to discuss this further, the dean said. Of course, I replied. So will my attorney. The discussion ended there. Emma noticed changes before I did. More people at the playground recognized me. Some smiled awkwardly. Others whispered. A few avoided eye contact completely. Emma didn't care. She was busy learning how to ride a bike, determined and furious every time she tipped over. Again, she said, climbing back on. I watched her push herself forward and felt something tighten in my chest. She didn't know fear the way I had known it. She knew effort. One afternoon, while she was at preschool, I received a message from an unknown sender. It was an email. I opened it without expectation. It was from Daniel's mother. I hadn't thought about her in years. The message was short. I didn't know. I am so sorry. Please let me meet her. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the laptop. Some doors stay closed for a reason. That evening, Emma and I sat on the couch reading her favorite book for the third time. "Mama," she said suddenly, "why do people on the phone say your name a lot?" I smiled. "Because they have questions." "Do they know me?" she asked. "No," I said, "and they don't need to." She accepted that easily. Children understand boundaries when they are drawn with love. Weeks later, I was invited to speak at a women's leadership forum in Boston. Smaller, quieter, thoughtful. I accepted not because I wanted attention, because I wanted control over the narrative. I spoke about responsibility without naming names, about the cost of silence, about the difference between reputation and character. Afterward, a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, "and he says it'll ruin his future." I took her hands. "It won't," I said. "But his might deserve to be." She laughed through tears. That night, alone in the hotel room, I let myself feel something new. Grief not for Daniel, for the woman I had been when I believed abandonment was my fault. I wrote her a letter I would never send. "You survived. You built something. You didn't imagine the harm." Then I closed the notebook and went to sleep. Daniel resurfaced months later in a way I didn't expect. Not publicly, personally. I was leaving Emma's school when I saw him across the street. Older, thinner, worn down by a life finally asking questions he couldn't dodge. He didn't approach immediately. He waited. I felt my body tense, but my mind stayed calm. When he finally crossed over, I stood my ground. "I'm not here to cause a scene," he said quietly. "You already did." I replied. He flinched. "I just wanted to see her," he said. "No," I replied. "She's my daughter," he said. "She's my responsibility." I replied. "You forfeited that claim." "You can't just erase me," he said. "I didn't," I replied. "You erased yourself." He looked past me toward the school doors. "She looks like you," he said softly. "Yes," I replied, "and that's enough." Silence stretched between us. "I lost everything," he said. I tilted my head. "You lost control. That's not the same thing." He laughed bitterly. "You always did know how to hurt. I know how to protect." I corrected. "Hurting was never the goal." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something shift, regret. "Not the kind that heals, the kind that lingers. I want to make this right." He said. "There is no right." I replied. "There is only forward." He nodded slowly. "Stay away," I said. "That's how you help." He turned and walked away. I didn't watch him leave. I didn't need to. Emma ran out of the school doors moments later, backpack bouncing, smile wide. "Mama," she called. I crouched down and opened my arms. She ran into them without hesitation. That was my answer. The years unfolded with a steadiness I hadn't known before. Emma grew taller, more curious, louder. She asked questions about fairness, about truth, about why some people lie to protect themselves. I answered honestly in ways appropriate for her age. "People make choices," I told her, "and choices have consequences." She accepted that easily. Children do when adults don't complicate it. My work shifted too. I left the university after being offered a directorship at an independent research institute. No politics, no donors dictating silence. Freedom. Emma came to the office sometimes, coloring in the corner, asking questions that made my colleagues smile. "She's confident." One of them said, "She's safe." I replied, "That distinction mattered." On Emma's 6th birthday, we went to the zoo. As we watched elephants lumber slowly across the enclosure, she tugged my hand. "Mama," she said, "do you think people can change?" "Yes," I replied. "But only if they want to," she nodded. "Then we don't wait for them." "No," I said, "we don't." That night, after she fell asleep, I sat alone and thought about how different my life felt. Not easier, clearer. I no longer wasted energy wondering if I was too much. I knew exactly what I was. Enough the world kept spinning, new scandals replaced old ones, attention shifted elsewhere, Daniel became a footnote. Emma became my focus, and that, I learned, was the most powerful form of revenge there is, living well. Time didn't heal everything, but it taught me what no longer deserved my attention. Emma was 7 when she first asked me about the stage. We were lying on the floor of her room, surrounded by half-finished puzzles and crayons without wrappers. The late afternoon sun spilled through the window, painting golden stripes across the carpet. "Mama," she said, staring at the ceiling, "why were you on TV once?" I smiled slightly. "Who told you that?" "A kid at school," she replied. "His mom watches a lot of shows." I took a breath. This moment had been coming for a while. I was on a stage. I said carefully, because I needed to tell the truth about something important. "Did it scare you?" she asked. "Yes," I admitted, "but some things matter more than being scared." She turned her head to look at me. "Like me, exactly like you," I said. She grinned satisfied and rolled back onto her stomach, already done with the conversation. Children never linger where adults overthink. As Emma grew, so did her sense of justice. She noticed when rules didn't make sense, when people were treated unfairly, when silence was used to protect the wrong things. One afternoon, she came home angry. "They told my friend she couldn't be the group leader because she's quiet." Emma said, throwing her backpack onto the chair. "That's not fair. What did you say?" I asked. "I said quiet people think more," she replied, "and thinking is important." I laughed softly. "You're right," Emma shrugged. "They didn't like it. Being right doesn't always feel good to other people." I said, "That's their problem," she replied simply. I knew then that whatever scars my past had left, they had not reached her. Daniel never contacted me again. Occasionally, his name surfaced in articles about fallen executives or cautionary tales in business ethics classes. I never read them closely. He was no longer part of my story. My mother passed away quietly when Emma was 9. We hadn't been close, but we had reached something like understanding in the years before she died. At the funeral, people spoke kindly of her. When it was over, Emma squeezed my hand. "She loved you," Emma said softly. "I know," I replied. "She just learned late." "That's okay," Emma said. "She still learned." Grief is easier when it's not tangled with unfinished fights. My career continued to evolve in ways I hadn't planned. I was asked to consult on policy, to advise organizations on ethical leadership, to speak about accountability without spectacle. I accepted selectively. I no longer felt the need to be everywhere. Emma became a teenager, then something more complex. Thoughtful, stubborn, kind in ways that weren't performative. She didn't chase approval. She didn't tolerate cruelty disguised as humor. She chose her friends carefully and walked away when something felt wrong. One night after a school event, she sat beside me in the car, quiet. "What's wrong?" I asked. "A boy said something stupid," she replied. "He said girls like me should be grateful for attention." "And what did you say?" I asked. "I said attention isn't valuable if it comes with disrespect," she replied. I smiled, pride swelling in my chest. "That's true," I said. She hesitated. "Did someone ever say that to you?" "Yes," I replied, "a lot." "And you still turned out okay?" she said. I turned out because I stopped believing them. I corrected gently. She nodded. That was the lesson. Not resilience through endurance, freedom through clarity. When Emma left for college, the house felt quiet again. but it didn't feel empty. I had learned the difference long ago. She called often at first, then less as her life expanded. She was busy discovering who she was when no one defined her by proximity to anyone else. One evening, she called me late. "Mama," she said softly, "I told someone my story today." I sat up straighter. How did that feel? Strange, she admitted, but good, like I wasn't hiding anything. "You don't have to," I said. "You never did." She was silent for a moment. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not letting silence become our story," she replied. Years later, Emma stood in front of her own audience, not as someone's secret, not as someone's scandal, but as herself. I sat in the crowd listening to her speak with calm confidence about values, about responsibility, about truth. She never mentioned Daniel. She didn't need to. Afterward, as we walked together down the steps of the auditorium, she linked her arm through mine. "You know," she said, smiling, "people always ask where I get my courage." I looked at her. "What do you tell them? That it was modeled," she said. "Not demanded." I laughed softly. That night, back in my quiet home, I sat at the kitchen table where so many chapters of my life had turned. I thought about the invitation that had started everything, the envelope, the stage, the choice. I hadn't planned to burn anyone's legacy. I had simply refused to protect a lie. And in doing so, I built something stronger than reputation. I built a life where my daughter never had to question her worth, where truth was not negotiable, where love did not require silence. That was the legacy that mattered, not his, mine, and now hers. The story didn't end with applause or outrage. It ended with a woman who stopped carrying shame that was never hers, with a daughter who walked forward without fear, with the quiet certainty that choosing truth once can echo for generations. That was enough. It was always enough.